to talk to us about the COVID. It's a return of our favorite guest, award-winning reporter, New York Times bestselling author, former host of his own show on MSNBC, host of the podcast Truth or Skepticism at Tasty Trade, and he's also been in, he was just in Barbados. It's Dylan Ratigan. Hey, Dylan, how are you?
Jimmy, I believe this is the first time that I've ever joined you with a camera. So
no, it's a big day. This is a big day at the Jimmy Dore show. We're getting to see.
I noticed that you have not gotten the Johnny Carson music. You know, my biggest thing in joining you is, you are, the Johnny Carson of the modern day. Granted, you're a little, more. Johnny Carson probably wouldn't have gone to a political war, but maybe honestly, in the middle of a pandemic, when you're not providing any support and you're basically blowtorching half the economy while enriching the other half of the economy, perhaps even Johnny Carson might have gotten involved at this point, but I can't speak for the man. But certainly, again, I'm just to keep it a little bit light. I'm just hoping for the. I want the music, I want to feel like it's an exciting thing. Like I'm talking to a big star in Southern California. Like our whole dream is to be like have our own garage where we can smoke pot in Southern California and tell people things. I mean, you've kind of reached the pinnacle of media status here. So.
Tonight from Burbank, California, The Tonight Show, starring Dylan Ratigan. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's talk about the stimulus. So let's just get to it. The COVID relief package. Now, if you don't know, the first time, the time when Bernie Sanders and the squad actually had leverage was when they passed the third COVID release, which was called the CARES Act. That was the $5 trillion upward transfer of wealth that every progressive Democrat, including Bernie Sanders, voted for, and then gaslighted everybody about what was in it afterwards. And that's why everybody's in the situation we're in now, because the oligarchs wanted their $5 trillion and they wanted it fast, and they knew they had to do it. It's disaster capitalism, shock doctrine. We all knew this was coming, and so they had to do it fast. So if Bernie Sanders would have put a hold on that bill and the progressives would have rallied their friends in the media, we could have maybe stopped it and we could have did something better. And now it's too late because the oligarchs already have all their money, which is why they don't give a shit if anybody else gets a check. That's why we can't get a check. Would you agree, Dylan, that that's kind of what's happening?
I mean, functionally, yes. I think you have to put it in a bigger context. Let's go to the beginning of this whole situation. A global pandemic is something that no living person or very few living people have ever dealt with, right? The last one was in 1918. The reaction to it is to enrich a very small group of people and annihilate a very large group of people economically, the obvious ones being bar owners, gym owners, hair salon owners, everybody that's been really most directly affected, all the small businesses. The logical government response is to support those that are being forced to close because of the pandemic. It is not to raid them and destroy their business, which is what the U.S. government has done. We've talked about what I guess they call a K-shaped recovery, or a K-shaped economy, really, where you have this huge catalyst from the pandemic that's creating this massive wealth. The most obvious one being Amazon or Tesla. But there are plenty of businesses, streaming TV shows, online brokerages. There's all this sort of digital universe that has actually benefited from the housebound dynamic of the pandemic. At the same time, it's obvious who is suffering. You do not have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to do a lot of analysis. All you have to do is walk outside or drive through any town or city in this country and look at the hair salon, look at the gym, look at the restaurants, look at the bars, go down the list. The obvious government response is to provide direct relief, especially to the businesses that are being annihilated. The U.S. government, the Democrats, what I call the Pelosi-Trump axis of evil. And while Trump is gone, Pelosi has actually been further empowered at this point because the Democrats idiotically believe that their people support them when the reality is they were the only alternative to Donald Trump.
Right.
And there's a big difference between me supporting you and you being the only alternative to Donald Trump. Uh, the government has and is not only failing, it is actively empowering the wealthiest interest in this country, and it is actively abandoning the most vulnerable in this country. And this stimulus bill is, I'm trying to be calm to offset your intensity today, but this stimulus bill is degrading, disrespectful, and insulting at a level that if it didn't happen, I actually wouldn't believe it. I had more faith in the U.S. government to actually have a more coherent view on the value of human life and the value of the American people. I did not expect them to work on behalf of the wealthiest interest in this country to harm those who are the most vulnerable. It's heartbreaking.
It is. Well, here it is. The headline is COVID relief package, $600 stimulus checks, and a $300 bonus for federal unemployment benefits in a new deal because it's the holidays and you're worth it. Congressional leaders on Sunday reached a deal on a $900 billion COVID economic relief package that includes a $600 direct payment to Americans and a $300 in enhanced unemployment for the next 10 weeks. $600 is not a relief check. It's a cruel joke. At this point, that's becoming a hackneyed joke. You could make it so over and over every time they come out with one of these things. Nancy Pelosi spends more than $600 on her hair. That is a fact, and her ice cream. And here she is describing this bill.
We also have in the legislation direct payments, which were not in the Republican bill, to America's working families. I would like them been bigger, but they are significant, and they will be going out soon.
Well, she wishes they could have been more. Wow, that's just so weird. She wishes it could have been more. Good thing she's such a master legislator and such a good negotiator, because she could have got $1,200 just a few weeks ago, and now she's getting $600. And anyway, she doesn't even care. That's
Jimmy. There was $2 trillion proposed before the election.
Yeah. $2 trillion.
We went from Donald Trump, the Republic. I mean, this is I don't. It doesn't. You don't need a lot of information to inflame the situation further. I don't know that it could even be more further inflamed. But let us not forget that there was a $2 trillion package with $1,200 checks and potential months of recurring, all these things that were in discussion before the election. And then after the election, they come out with less than half. A month late, again, the layers of insult. I'm at the point where I actually believe that the most important thing right now is on an individual level is to look to the person I mean, this is the old Jewish proverb, and I'm not to get all sort of, humanitarian on you, but look to the person that is nearest to wherever you are and help them. Because the government is not only not helping, it is hostile to the health and well-being of the American people.
It's like an enemy foreign country has taken over our country and is trying to ruin it. But it's Nancy Pelosi, it's Bernie Sanders, it's Chuck Schumer, it's people, it's Americans that are doing this and voting for this. Pelosi wouldn't answer my question about why the $900 billion deal is more acceptable to her than the $1.8 trillion offer Mnuchin made to her this fall. Trump was calling for a $2,000 stimulus check, and our Blue House could only cough up $600. 2021 is going to be a very, very dark year. Breaking: White House aides intervened Thursday to prevent President Trump from demanding Congress approve checks for $2,000 a person, sources say. Trump told allies he wants at least $1,200 and as much as $2,000. Aides told Trump his demands could blow up the talks. With $600 in COVID relief, you could almost buy a door panel for one of Nancy Antoinette's Sub-Zero freezers. You don't think I'm kidding? So that's her freezer she stands in front of when she eats ice cream while people are starving. This is just for the left hinge on the door. That's not even the fridge. It's the $619. Just for the hinge for the door is $619 in Nancy Pelosi's fridge. So, Okay, so if she had a broken hinge on her fridge, she wouldn't even have enough money to fix it with the $600. But of course, Nancy Pelosi has way more money than she'll ever know what to do with. She's a 100-millionaire. So White House has secured a tax break. This is breaking. White House has secured a tax break for corporate meal expenses, a.k.a. the 3 martini deduction, in draft of emergency economic relief per officials. The Dems agreed to it in exchange for larger earned income child tax credits, aides say. Holy shit. Okay, good.
The thing is, Jimmy, again, it's one thing to discuss policy. It's one thing to discuss, philosophy, political philosophy, social philosophy, abstract concepts. You say this better, more effectively than anybody. This is a global pandemic. This is causing the complete elimination of huge sections of our economy to function. I'm not talking about down 10 or 20% in a recession. I'm talking about down 90 to 100%, complete blowtorching of the entire hospitality sector, the entire travel sector, huge sections of the small businesses. And think about the U.S. budget in reaction to September 11th, which was a relatively minor economic catastrophe. Politically, it's a different story, but from an economic standpoint, it's a flea on a dog's ass compared to the pandemic. Think about the reaction in 2009 to the financial crisis, 26 trillion with a T made available to stabilize the economic system at that time, at its peak. I honestly do not understand. It's incomprehensible to me that any government of any country, the Chinese government, the Russian government, there are governments that we would look at as vastly more hostile, dictatorial, self-centered, abusive. And by the way, those governments are. I'm not defending, there are slaves in China. Putin has total control of Russia. And yet the only major government that I have seen that is actively making policy to deprive 50 million, 80 million, a third of the U.S. population, half of the U.S. population, huge numbers, from all support while simultaneously legally mandating that they must close their businesses. Now, lockdowns have their time and place, but they only have a time and place, one, early in the pandemic. Once the virus is everywhere, the virus is everywhere. Yes, the lockdown slows things down. I'm not trying to get into a lockdown debate here. But if you're going to do that, you must provide support.
And if you don't, what will happen? If you don't, what will happen?
If you don't, people will starve. People will die. People will live on the street. Okay? This is not an abstract issue. This is, you either allow people the ability to make a living, or you support them in the context of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. You do not, as when we talked about this in March, I said, the pandemic is like stopping the car on the side of the road, and you got to deal with that. Instead of supporting the people that are stuck inside of that car, which is all of hospitality, all of travel, all of small business, everything we've talked about, they are literally raiding the car, ripping the parts off, and taking the money and leaving the people on the side of the road. Again, even after what they did in March, I was sure, I was honestly, I guess I really am a fool, honestly. I was sure there would be a $2 trillion package around Christmas time after the election. There's no way that they're going to talk about $2 trillion in November with the Republicans, with the Treasury Secretary at $1.8 trillion, with Trump pushing for $2 trillion. and then you wait until after the election and you come out at $900 billion with a single $600 check. It is again, find the person nearest to you who is in need of help and help them. I really believe it has come to that point, Jimmy. I again, the hyperbole.
What I hear exactly what you're saying, and you're correct. What I think is, if people don't, if this doesn't cause social unrest, so it was the murder of George Floyd that happened on video that caused the biggest social unrest in the history of this country. People don't realize that. And so there's going to be, I can't imagine how if 19 million people are about to kick out, they're closing people's businesses. I don't understand. The normal reaction of human beings is to revolt. The normal reaction is I have to eat. So there's either going to be crime or social unrest. And
both.
And probably both. And the news media's failure on this is unbelievable. You are seeing what happened when Bill Clinton consolidated in 1996 the Telecommunications Act. You are seeing that the people who are inflicting this pain on America own those media outlets. Those people who are making sure that happens own Chris Hayes, own Jake Tapper, own Anderson Cooper, own fake tough guy Lawrence O'Donnell. They're all bought and paid for, which is why this is being allowed to happen. Our news media is garbage. They're there to oppress you. Stop watching MSNBC and CNN and start revolting. It's time to start revolting. This is nuts. Bernie Sanders came on today and said there's a lot of help in the bill, but it's not enough. Wouldn't it be great if Bernie Sanders came on to TV today and said, this doesn't cover shit. $600 doesn't pay anybody's rent. It's time for my 30 million followers to do a general strike, and we need to shut this fucking economy down until this government acts. Wouldn't it be great if he did that? He's never going to do that. He's never going to help you. It's time for social unrest in America, and they're asking for it. They're asking for it. And you know who's asking for it? Nancy Pelosi. And why is she asking for it? Because she's worth $114 million. That's what Nancy Pelosi's worth. And you want to know what they're doing in other countries? Australia has given people $2,000 a month since this started. Canada, $1,400 a month. Denmark, up to $3,000 a month. France, up to $7,000 a month. Germany, $7,000 a month. Ireland, $2,000 a month. The UK, $3,000 a month. The US, $1,200 for the last 32 weeks. Your government is doing this to you on purpose. And if America doesn't revolt now, we're just going to become Brazil. It's going to be a Mad Max world out there, and people are going to start putting fences around their houses and buying even more guns. So I know what people get upset that I yell into a webcam because it hurts politicians' feelings. Those people are called fucking lemmings. Fuck those people. It's time for us to scream like our hair is on fire because our hair is on fire. That's what Nina Turner said. And the people who want me to calm down already have health care. Aren't being at risk of being kicked out of their house. They didn't just have their business closed down. Those people who want me to be softer, none of that shit happened to them. Cenk Uygur's a fucking millionaire who just took $20 million from Hillary Clinton donors, and he doesn't want you to have health care right now. Don't listen to those people. It's time to scream right now. If this isn't the time to scream, then there is never a time to scream. You know, when they did this stuff to the colonial, you know what George Washington did? He got a bunch of people and they picked up guns. That's what George Washington did. When they did this to them, they got a bunch of people together, the founder of our country, and they picked up guns. And people want me to not yell?
I mean, this is a profound tragedy, the scope of which I don't think people really... Again,
no. People didn't understand the CARES Act. Now they're finally starting to understand Bernie Sanders, the squad, and everybody threw them under the bus. They're just starting to see it now. Food lines, 19 million people being kicked out, 15 million people lost their health care, and they got $1,200. People are starting... I'm sorry, Dylan, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No. I mean, I would listen. You can mark it up. Don't get crazy. It'll be $1,800 for the last 33 weeks. How's that? Does that make you feel a little better?
I don't understand.
Again,
Go ahead.
The last time we spoke, I was saying it's a dereliction of duty. And what I mean when I say that that is not hyperbole. And the graphic you were just showing illustrates what a dereliction of duty it is. It is not the people of this country's fault that their businesses have been closed, that they've lost their health care, and they cannot make a living. It is not their fault. It's no one's fault, by the way.
Right. Well, correct.
I'll blame the child. I'll blame. I mean, I can get into the sourcing of the virus, but that's another distraction at this point.
So
the rational response to an unexpected global catastrophe is to provide direct support to those who are being destroyed economically by the necessary response to the pandemic. This is not complex. This is not a political debate.
No.
This is not posture.
No.
This is not. I'm not trying to persuade you of something. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Every government in the world
is doing this.
Understands that the only alternative in a global pandemic that causes a complete shutdown of entire sections of the economy, major sections, is to provide direct support.
Here's somebody from Australia, from New Zealand. We got $600 every week for months until we were all back at work. Our little country can do it, and the wealthiest country in the world can't. Yeah, well, how much money do you guys have for bombs? I bet you don't have any bombs in New Zealand, you big talker. So glad I'm living here in Australia. Since the pandemic started, I received $24,000 in hardship payments from the government. After 9 months, your government is giving everybody $600. She's got $24,000 in Australia. Wow. Compared to $1,800 in the richest country in the world.
$1,800 over 33 weeks.
Yeah. Compared to $24,000. Hey, a $600 stimulus check would not cover a family's average rent in any state. That's something everyone realizes except the federal government. It is nearly 9 months since Congress passed the first COVID bill. Add the $600 value, those checks would be worth half of the $1,200 given out under the CARES Act in the spring, and the new value is less than what past polling has indicated most Americans think further direct payments should be. Up to 8 million tenants will face eviction with an estimated $32 billion in back rent owed. But don't worry, it can't happen until January 31st. Here it is. With a $600 relief check, you could pay the median monthly rent in January in approximately 0 states. There is not one state that'll pay the median rent in $600. Hey, this deal is good enough. It should be larger. It should have happened months ago, but an agreement on coronavirus aid is still a welcome dose of good news. That's the editorial board at the New York Times. That's their acting like, we're all okay. Our money actually went up during this because the upper 10%'s money, they've increased their money. So the people at the New York Times editorial board are doing better than ever. And so of course, that's their reaction to it. Of course, they're not going to make people upset. They're owned by a billionaire. New York Times works for a billionaire. They do the bidding of the billionaires. Read manufacturing consent. They're there to manufacture the consent for this bullshit government right now, screwing you during a COVID virus, during a pandemic, during the biggest crisis of anybody's life. The New York Times is manufacturing consent for this. So what people need to do is rise up and revolt against the New York Times and their government. People need to rise up against their government. I mean, real revolution right now. In the streets, shut shit down. And Bernie Sanders needs to use his following to do a strike. He'll never do it. They'll never do anything for you. Don't look for anybody in government to ever do anything for you. They're not your friends. And right now, I'm not canceling them. They just canceled the United States. That's what the government did. You want to have cancel culture? What they just did was cancel our lives. And people are upset that I'm screaming. at politicians who are millionaires. Nancy Pelosi's worth $114 million. So what would you do? Here's the earth and it's burning. What would you do in that situation? Well, a $600 check, I guess. $600 3 weeks from today won't even pay for a coffin. The government found a way to give $50 billion to the airlines, which then laid off 90,000 people right after they got that money. Now all they can do is give us $600 of our own money back at the time of record growth and poverty. The cost is 16% of the $900 billion stimulus package. That's what that is. $600 is 1 to 2 weeks' rent. Not even. 40 million people are facing evictions and food insecurity. 40 million. Healthcare inequality. How does $600 help evictions? How does $600 debt from piling up? How does $600 keep the utilities on when you owe $1,300 over 9 months? How does $600 cover healthcare premiums, co-pays, and prescription costs? This is what happens when the government doesn't fear a revolt from the general public. This is what happens when independent news hosts protect their favorite politicians instead of raking them over the coals because they ridiculously think that they can get politicians to do their bidding if they're nice to them. You know who thinks that? People who already have health care. People who already have an apartment and who aren't facing eviction and have health care. They think the way to influence the politicians is to be nice to them instead of raking them over the coals and making them afraid we're going to come to their house for them. That's what they should be afraid of. There are a bunch of fucking assholes who host YouTube shows who think the way to get shit done is to be nicer. Those people grew up in cul-de-sacs. Those people have health care. Those people don't give a fuck about you. Those people never worked with their hands a day in their fucking lives. And you tell those people to go fuck themselves. You're listening to the people who want Medicare for all, and you want it right fucking now. Listen to a bunch of assholes make bullshit excuses why people can't have health care, and it's because Jimmy Dore's mean to a webcam? Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.